Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head over to America once again, and we're going to have a look at a beer from another brewery that I've never tried anything from before. So this brewery seemed to be one of the bigger producers in their state. They seem to be very highly rated, and this is also the first time that a beer from said state will appear here on Rampant Lion Reviews. And as I always say, I like trying different things from different places in America. It's always nice to add new states to the channel, of course. But the beer itself is a style that I very much enjoy, one that I've not had in quite a little while actually, so I have to say I'm very curious to see what this one has in store for us. So fingers crossed it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to go to the state of Ohio, and I'm not sure whether you can refer to Ohio as the Midwest or Appalachia. I don't know. Let me know about that in the comments section below. But we're going to go to the city of Akron, which is in the northern part of the state, and we're having a look at my first beer from Thirsty Dog Brewing. So this particular beer is the Bernese Barleywine Ale. It comes in at 10.5% ABV, and I think you know what style this one is. American style barley wine. So yeah, this beer arrived here in Sweden as part of the temporary assortment through Systembolaget, and I'm not sure exactly when it was released. I have had this beer for a couple of months in fact, but being a barley wine, you know, you don't have to care so much about how long you let it sit for as long as you store it properly, and this one has definitely been stored properly since I got it. But yeah, I think this could turn out to be really quite interesting actually. It's been a wee while since I've had an American barley wine, but yeah, I've heard about this brewery before, and that was the main reason that I bought this beer actually. But since it's an Ohio beer, a massive shout out to my good friend Rod J over at J Beerventures. He's the king of the live stream, the king of the American craft beer live stream as far as I can see. But yeah, lovely guy, and I do hope that when I make it over to America next year, I can meet up with him and do a few out and about videos and things at his local tap rooms. That would be very cool actually. But yeah, lovely guy, does a lot of really nice beer reviews. Do make sure you check out the link to his channel in the video description below, and very nice to finally tick his state off the list of my American states actually. I don't know how many states I've reviewed beers from now, but you know, it always used to be that it was California and Colorado that you got things from, and various other stuff, but we're getting a lot more variety over from the states now, which is great to see. But yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see how we go. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that hopefully I can do in the future from Thirsty Dog Brewing. This is the very first time I'm trying one of their beers, as I mentioned, but there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the American beers I've reviewed for you, and that's being added to whenever I get the opportunity. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about Thirsty Dog Brewing. So Thirsty Dog Brewing, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Akron in Ohio, and the company was founded back in 1997 by John Najaway. Now John comes from a legal background, and he worked for a law firm for a good number of years from what I understand, but he first got into craft beer after a client invited him to a Kentucky beer camp event, and this set his life in a completely different direction. He was just blown away by the kind of variety of beer that was on offer there. But he soon began to homebrew, and he developed a good number of recipes brewing with his friends and things like this before he went on to officially establish the company in 1997. But the name of the brewery is inspired by his relationship with his dogs, and also the relationship that everyone has with their four-legged friends. And Thirsty Dog, I think it's quite catchy. But the original location that they had was a brew pub in Canton, but then they later opened up further locations in Montrose and Dayton before they finally started bottling their beers for distribution in 2003. Very quickly though, they found that that small volume they had wasn't enough to kind of meet demand, and by 2005 they were in need of a proper production facility. So John found a site in his hometown of Akron, and he initiated the renovation of a 120-year-old building that used to house the Burkhard Brewery, and this facility actually closed back in 1964. But they invested quite a lot of money in this place to get it up and running, and now it's pretty impressive. And these days they offer tours of the site, and they also have an on-site tap room as well actually, which you can go and visit. I think they call it the Tap House, but you can see some pictures of that on the website, so I would recommend you check that out in the video description below. You can find the link there. But over the years, these guys have continued to expand, and today they're producing around 20,000 US barrels per year, and they employ around 40 people. But as of August 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 360 different beers according to Untappd, and that number will no doubt increase over the next little while. But their main beer, their flagship beer, from what I understand at the moment, is the Citra Dog, which is an IPA, and it was a porter that was their flagship beer before that, actually. So yeah, that is all I can really tell you about Thirsty Dog Brewing for the moment. As I say, if you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all those different beers that they've done. So yeah, I think we can move on and actually have a taste of the beer itself now. So I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork of this one before we open it up. So there you can see the artwork there, the lovely Bernese dog. Those things are big softies, they just want to make their owners happy. But there you can see the Swiss mountains in the background, I believe, you know, Bern, of course, Switzerland. Yeah, the Bernese mountain dog finds its origins in Switzerland. But there you can see Thirsty Dog Brewing Company. It says on the side here, Bernese Barleywine Ale. Like Mr. Buck, the Bernese Mountain Dog on the label is a big beer, a complex, dry and unfiltered barley wine that will only get better with age. The one malt aroma possible only in a barley wine, together with a deep malty flavour melds perfectly with the hops for a truly unforgettable experience. Melds, I've never heard that word before. I don't know. Americans like to use unusual words on their beers sometimes. You do find this. But yeah, melds. I'll need to look that up after the video. Even as a native English speaker, I don't know this word. But yeah, well, you can see Thirsty Dog's bottle cap on this one. You can see the dog with the tank in his mouth. That's a good dog. But yeah, 10.5% ABV, this one, the American barley wine. As I've explained in other videos, for me, the original English barley wine tends to be a little bit more kind of toasty and sometimes a little bit more sort of grainy in its flavour, also a little bit more phenolic on the fruits, whereas the American ones tend to be, you know, quite brown sugary and quite sweet, if you like, and a little bit more oily. In a sense, that's what I've always found to be the main difference between the American and the English ones, of course. You know, whenever the Americans get their hands on a beer style, they tend to make it, you know, a bit bigger and sweeter and more kind of oily and slick, if that makes sense. At least that's my experience. Some of you might disagree with that. But yeah, this one is a 355ml bottle, and I'm not sure exactly how much I would have paid for this, but for some reason, 70 Swedish kroner seems to stick in my mind with this. So if that's right, then, you know, 70 Swedish kroner for this, that would translate to €7, a little bit over £6 sterling, and I guess somewhere in the region of $8 American for the bottle. So that's not bad, actually. I don't know how much you would pay for this actually over in the States, but you know, knowing in the States they'd probably sell this in like a 4-pack or a 6-pack or something. I always found that annoying in America, that it was quite difficult to get people to give you, you know, a mixed 6-pack in a lot of places. They wanted to sell you a 6-pack of the same beer, and for me, who likes tasting beer, that's just annoying. I don't want to buy 6 barley wines, you know. But yeah, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. Yeah, I'll need to keep this bottle cap for the collection, but let's get this guy out and into the glass. A 10.5% barley wine, the Bernese Barleywine Ale from Thirsty Dog Brewing Company, Akron, Ohio, over in America. This should be quite nice. Should go up the last little bit, and there we are. It's a nice pour, actually. Yeah, no real sediment visible on the bottom of the bottle there, but yeah, certainly looks very, very nice. It says it's supposed to have 75 IBUs in it, so that will be very, very nice, of course. So yeah, anyway, this looks pretty damn impressive. So before the head starts to disappear on this one, just look at the foam on that, incidentally. Look at how foamy that thing is. That's a lovely head on this beer. But yeah, I would say this beer is just over a finger of a frothy, I would say very light beige colour, this one. I don't think it's quite fawny. No, it's more of a kind of beige colour rather than anything else, but 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head there, and that head, as you can see, is a beautiful, very nice foamy. It's very nice, it's very small bubbles, really, really foamy, which I think is pretty cool. And yeah, it's surprising that at 10.5% this beer holds its head quite as long as it does. You can see it fading away a little bit, but it holds its head really well. So in terms of colour of this beer, if we shine the light through this one, I would describe this beer as a sort of, it's you know, to you guys on the camera, it might actually appear that it's like a very light sort of mahogany, very slightly chestnutty colour, but it's actually a really, really kind of dark, slightly rich amber. You know, this beer is very, you know, if you put the light through this, it is more of a kind of very dark reddish amber colour actually. But yeah, as you can see on the camera, to you guys, it's more of a kind of chestnut, light mahogany kind of thing. So remember, the colour of your beer depends on, one, the type of malts that you use. This determines the magnitude of the colour of your beer, usually the EBC rating. But two, the length of the wort boil is also going to play a role. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a slightly darker colour of beer. But it doesn't vary too much based on that variable. Any barrel aging that you do and any adjuncts that you add in as well will affect the colour of the beer. But usually those other two variables you only really need to care about when we're talking sour beers. But of course, when it's a more brown sugary orientated beer like this, you know, it can theoretically affect the colour of it. With an imperial stout, it's very difficult to change the colour of that with barrel aging and adjuncts, of course. I have seen it done once or twice, but those are very unusual circumstances. But yeah, going by the colour of this one, I would guess that this beer maybe has had a slightly longer boil. For a barley wine, you usually want to boil it for at least like 4 hours, but quite often they'll do, you know, 6 and 7 hour boils with these things. So yeah, this one I think could turn out to be very, very nice. So let's have a closer look at the aroma then, and just and see how we get on with this one. I think we've said everything that we need to about the appearance, other than the fact that it's got a little bit of a naturally hazy sort of thing to it. So aroma time then, let's see how we get on with this. Now, I'm going to say straight away, this actually strikes me as one of the more kind of bready barley wines that I've had from the States, because normally a lot of the ones that I have are big and sort of, you know, oily and really brown sugary leaning, but this one strikes me as having a little bit more of an almost English breadiness to it, which I find quite interesting. Now in America they've got beautiful malts, of course. The two-row and the crystal malts are the most kind of popular types over there, and I do wish we got more of those in Europe, although in fairness we do have awesome malts from, you know, Germany and Austria and Slovenia and all of these kind of places. But the American two-row and crystal malts just make their beers taste slightly different, and you can smell some of those in this beer. I wouldn't be surprised if it's some different kinds of crystal and, you know, two-row malts that are in here. They're just quite distinctive. It's just the way the breadiness and the kind of the slight graininess is. It's like you always get a sweet bready note from these two different kinds of malt. And of course, within those two types that I'm talking about, you've got various different variants, I guess you could say. But yeah, the aroma of this one is very nice. But once you get your nose adjust to it a bit more, beyond that kind of big breadiness that it has, and I would say that incidentally, it's a kind of wholemeal, brown bready sort of character that you get out of this one. And you do get a wee bit of a kind of bread crusty, grainy element out of it, and there's one or two little woody characters in the backbone of this beer as well. But once, you know, it starts to open up a little bit, you can certainly smell, you know, you can certainly smell a sort of big boozy character to this one. I really like how that goes together. So yeah, lovely big kind of brown sugary boozy notes in this one, and it's a kind of, you do get a wee bit of that treacly molasses sort of thing out of this one. The brown sugars that you get in this beer are very, very big and very boozy in fact, and I have to say I do appreciate how that goes together in this one. So it gets a thumbs up from me in that regard actually. So yeah, the hoppy side of this beer as well kind of complements it really well. But one thing I would say about this beer, it doesn't strike me as the most potent in its aroma. It's actually quite a reserved beer in that sense. It's quite difficult to pick out the different elements of it. But you know, you sometimes get this with the American barley wines, that they'll be quite reserved and then they're really punchy in terms of their flavour. And I think that's probably what this one is going to turn out like. But yeah, as I say, big brown bready base, bit of bread crust. You do get a bit of a kind of woody element to it as well. Then on top of that, you've got these big, highly caramelised brown sugars. I was said earlier there's a wee bit of a treacle molasses sort of thing to that. I'm a bit hesitant about that remark now, because it seems to be more of just a very thick caramel. Treacle and molasses, of course, tends to be a bit more of a kind of darker, leathery type brown sugar, but this one actually has a fair wee bit kind of brightness and sweetness to it. I get a little bit of a kind of biscuity note out of it as well, like McVitie's digestive biscuits, cookies as the Americans would call them. But yeah, I think that kind of covers a lot of what's going on in the malt base here. Now remember, the Barleywine is essentially the big brother of the double IPA. It's basically an American barley wine is essentially a very strong West Coast double IPA. These, you know, the pale ales, the IPAs, the double IPAs and the barley wines, these beers are all related to each other through their hop to malt ratios. So that's one thing to bear in mind. And an old school American barley wine is like a very strong West Coast double IPA in a lot of ways. But the malty aroma in this one, I think, is very nice. On the hoppy side of things, there's a few interesting things going on as well. So bear in mind that I have had this beer for a little while. It doesn't say when it was bottled, in fact, or when it was imported. So I don't know how old this one is, but as I say, that doesn't matter too much for a barley wine, as long as you store it properly. But yeah, you do get a wee bit of earthiness in the you do get a little bit of earthiness in the back corners of the palate, in the back corners of the nose with this one. We're still talking aroma. You've got a little bit of a herbal quality in there, and you do get a nice big kind of floral aromaticity with this one. I do suspect that this is probably a bit of, I think this, going by the aroma, I think this might be a kind of old school, Columbus, Chinook, Cascade beer, this one. I think this is probably what they've done with this. There might be another hop in there actually as well, because some of the fruits have got a bit of a brighter characteristic to them. But yeah, wee bit of earthiness, lovely big kind of floral aromatic note to it. And then you can just get a little bit of kind of spiciness and kind of piney dankness in there. But at the front of the nose, you certainly get a little bit of a grassy character to this one. I find it to be quite a wet grassy character. And then of course behind that, you've got all the kind of fruity notes to the beer. So yeah, for me, as I say, I think this one is Cascade Chinook. Maybe Columbus, I'm not 100% sure about the Columbus, because it's not quite as spicy as you might get from Columbus. But there could be another hop in there as well, like a little bit of Simcoe or something like that, because the fruits are quite bright. So on the fruity side of things then, I definitely get a little bit of that darker grapefruit. There's a lovely big kind of juicy figgy quality to it as well. So yeah, darker grapefruit. Darker grapefruit, big juicy kind of figgy notes underneath as well. I do get a wee bit of an almost like sultana-y, raisiny note out of this one, which is quite interesting. And that's one of the things that makes me wonder if there is another hop in this beer. But yeah, certainly it's quite red fruity leaning. Big grapefruity notes. Wee bit of I do get a wee bit of sultana note, but then I get quite a lot of that juicy kind of figgy thing, and it's that juicy figgy note that makes me think there's Cascade in this. Cascade's a lovely hop to use in these American barley wines, incidentally. But yeah, that's what really lingers there, is that figgy, jammy, juicy note that you get out of this. And there's potentially a wee bit of a blackcurranty type note to the beer as well, actually. But I mean, overall, it's quite nice, this one. It does strike me as being a little bit more of an old school American barley wine, but as I said, a bit bready in comparison to some of the other ones that I've had before. But yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about the aroma for this one. It's about time to taste this beer. So yeah, as I always say, take a bit of time to ponder over the aroma, but we are going to taste this one now. So this one is the Bernese Barleywine Ale, 10.5% from Thirsty Dog Brewing Company in Akron, Ohio, over in America. Really looking forward to this. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Yeah, that's pretty nice actually. Yeah. Now I think what I was saying about Columbus earlier with this one, I think there is a bit of Columbus in this. I'm going to say that straight away because you get a wee bit of spiciness around the edge of your palate, but we'll break this beer down as we always do and describe the flavour properly. So yeah, on the as we say, on the on the malty side of things, then it is quite interesting. It takes, of course, when you've got a big boozy beer like this, it takes your mouth a wee bit of time to adjust to it. But yeah, I would say this beer, the more that you drink of it, the more the beer kind of smoothens out and it sweetens up on the palate, in fact. But straight away across the middle and the back third of your palate, you can feel that nice smooth bready backbone there. And as I was picking up in the aroma, it's quite a a wholemealy brown bready sort of thing there, and it does get a wee bit more grainy the further you go into the aftertaste. So yeah, smooth brown bready notes in there, and it does get a wee bit thicker onto the back third of your palate. So yeah, I like how this one goes together. So yeah, on the how do we say? on the kind of malty side of things, then underneath that, if we just focus on the middle third of the palate now, so middle third of your palate, at either end you get a little bit of a stronger kind of bread crusty note there, then you've got that big brown bready base to it, and then underneath the front half of that front third of your tongue, there's a little bit more of a kind of woody element to it, which I really like. But then yeah, sitting on top of that, as we say, you get that big wholemeal brown bready sort of thing. Sitting on top of that, as we say, you'll get a little bit of a you'll find that the brown sugars come out quite quickly. The bready layer on this one isn't actually the thickest, which is kind of interesting. But the beer itself does have an oily character to it, although this is definitely one of the smoother American barley wines that I've had. It's certainly not the most oily and slick one. So yeah, that's interesting. But yeah, where do we go with it now? Sitting on top of that bready note though, you start to feel the big brown sugary notes out of this, and it does feel that this has had quite a long boil, because you get that big brown sugary note in there, but you've almost got a little bit of a kind of leathery element sitting in it as well. So on top of that kind of brown bready layer that you have, you can feel there's a big circle of brown sugar there. In the very dead centre of it, it feels really kind of concentrated and very, very thick, but as you move further out from that, it gets a little bit more kind of sweet. It does get a little bit more kind of sweet, if you like, but you can feel that big, concentrated, highly caramelised, treacly molasses sort of thing right in the middle of the palate. But as you move out from that, it gets a little bit sweeter. When you move beyond that, it gets a little bit more kind of, it does get a little bit more sort of, how would we say, a little bit more of a kind of toasty brown sugar. And it's only at the very edges of that middle third of your palate that you start to get some of the kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity elements out of it. But it's actually quite a straight shooting barley wine, this one. It's brown bread, a little bit of a woody undertone, then that kind of different big boozy brown sugary character that you get out of it. Other than that, there's not too much going on in this one actually, which is kind of interesting. Although in fairness, it does sweeten up the more that you drink of the beer actually, so it does take your palate a wee bit of time to adjust to this one. But yeah, let's focus on that then. So border region between middle third and back third of your palate, again, you've got a little bit of a bready build up in this one, which I do like. So yeah, big, a little bit of bready build up in there, a wee bit of a more intense bread crust, but the base of that back third of your palate in there, you do again get a wee bit of that kind of bread crusty note underneath. You can feel the slightly thicker brown, kind of wholemealy brown bready note in there. Then on top of that, you can feel those more airy, yeasty kind of characters to the beer, and that's a kind of a slightly sweeter brown bread. So if you start at the back of your palate on this one, you can feel the flavour is a little bit taller. So as you come further forward, it kind of condenses down a wee bit, and as you go into the middle third of your palate, the flavour just kind of squashes down and compresses a little bit more. So yeah, that's kind of typical to what you get with a lot of beers. So the yeasty part of the beer comes out on the back third of your palate. But yeah, this is quite a straight shooting and kind of bready barley wine compared to a lot of the American ones that I've had, and that takes me by surprise a little bit, to be honest with you, because usually they're a lot more kind of sweeter and brown sugar in this. So this one does have a wee bit of that more English, grainy, bready kind of character to it, which is interesting. But yeah, let's focus on the hoppy side of things then. And the hoppy side of the beer is definitely American, we'll say that straight off the bat. But yeah, back corners of the palate then, you get a nice little bit of earthiness in there, and as you move further forward, it does develop a little bit of a herbal character, but then as you push towards the front corners of the palate, there's a lot of sort of spiciness underneath it. There's a nice big kind of piney resin in there as well, which I really like. And then round the front curve of the palate, you've got a bit more of a kind of zesty, grassy kind of note to it. It's got a little bit of zest to it, but I actually find the grassy character in this beer to be quite sort of wet and green leafy, if that makes sense. So yeah, on the I think that's everything we really need to say about the green component with this one. So we should focus on the fruity part of the beer. So border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again you get a little bit of a bready build-up in there and a wee bit of a bread crust, but the base of that front third of your palate is definitely, again, that sort of kind of grainy, slightly brown bready element there. And sitting on top of that, you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy, fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. And again, I do really like how this beer goes together in that particular regard. So yeah, nice big oily fruity character to this one, and you actually can still feel with this beer, it almost feels a little bit dusty from the kind of hoppy characters. This is quite a bitter barley wine, this one, as we mentioned earlier. But let's focus on the fruity side of the beer then. Let's describe these fruity flavours. So yeah, if you go towards the back of that front third of your palate, there's a really nice sort of grapefruity element to it. Then as you move further forward, it's got a wee bit of, as we say, you start to get a little bit more. You can feel that the cascade, I should say this, let's take this as the base. The cascade, I think there is cascade in this one, and that's forming the backbone of this beer, because you've got that lovely juicy kind of figgy jammy note forming the base of the front third of your palate there. That's sitting there. The stronger grapefruity notes are in there, and as you move further forward back there, you do get a wee bit of a kind of sultana. You do get a little bit of a kind of sultana green grapey sort of note out of this one, but then as you move into the front half of that front third of your palate, you get a little bit more of a kind of black curranty note out of this one, and it's almost a wee bit, it almost gives you a wee bit of a, there's not a blackberry note to this one, it's kind of figs, and then it's a sort of, sultana type quality that you get out of this, and dried white green grapes. That's what I'm really getting out of this beer, but a cascade base, a little bit of grapefruit at the back, and then a little bit of an almost kind of sultana type note sitting on top of it. I almost get a wee touch of like a spicy apple out of this one, which is sort of quite interesting. There's quite a wee bit of dried fruity character to this beer too. So this one, in the way the fruity character goes together, is quite different from a few from a number of the American barley wines that I've had. But I certainly do like what it's got going on for it. So it gets a thumbs up from me in that regard, actually. So yeah, I think that covers everything we really need to say about the flavour of this one. This is quite different, quite a bread. The malty side of this beer really leans a bit towards the English side of things, but the hoppy character has more of an American note to it. It's certainly got the American bitterness, and then I think the hoppy fruits itself have a mix of American and an English character going on. So yeah, that's certainly quite quirky, definitely. So yeah, where do we go with the rest of this now then? Yeah, on the as we say, on the kind of fruity part of the beer then, or on the mouthfeel then, we should round off the review with the mouthfeel. Brain's not working now. But yeah, this is quite a full-bodied beer. It's at the bottom end of full-bodied for me. The carbonation is very, very smooth, and it does have a fair wee bit of oiliness to it and a little bit of slickness, but I think there's quite a bit of leathery character to the mouthfeel of this one as well, I would say, which is kind of interesting. We know the IBU count of this beer is 75 IBUs. I think if I was doing it blind, having not seen that, I probably would have guessed it was like 80 or 90 IBUs, but remember, IBU count is my weakest point of beer reviewing by quite a distance. But the base, the malty side of this beer, as we say, it's got quite a smooth, bready kind of character to it. There's some big oily brown sugars in there, although I do find the brown sugary bit quite leathery in this one. And you've also got some really nice juicy, fruity character as well. So I really like how this beer goes about its business in that sense, actually. There's a lot of really interesting stuff going on with this beer, in fact. So yeah, the fruity side of the beer, quite red, fruity and juicy, but yeah, a wee bit of a dried fruity character too. So yeah, this has been a really interesting barley wine to review, actually, quite different from the other American stuff that I've had in recent times. But yeah, I have enjoyed this one, let's just say that. So yeah, I think we can sign off on this review on that, actually. So yeah, this one was the Bernese Barleywine Ale, a 10.5% American barley wine, although quite a bit of English character for me, from Thirsty Dog Brewing Company in Akron in Ohio. So yeah, thank you again for watching my reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Thirsty Dog Brewing as well, and we will return to these guys at some point in the future. I do hope that maybe I can go over and visit Rod J, like I said, in Ohio, and get a few more different beers. I still need to try some Hop and Frog stuff as well. They're probably the best known Ohio brewery over here in Europe, actually. I need to try and get something of theirs and review it on the channel at some point. But yeah, that's something for the future. But thank you again for watching. Check out my social media, check out their social media, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Slàinte, skål, and cheers. I'm going to go and sip on the rest of this.